Hi, this is Richard Reyes from ProgPhonic on ProgRock.com, and we're talking today with Wojciech Pielużek from Glass Island. Wojciech, thank you for your time today. How have you been doing?
Oh, good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much. Really
Excellent.
busy. I know we're all really busy these days, but thank you for your time. My pleasure. I want to start off by congratulating on your latest release, Lost Media. I have to say that our community here on ProgRock.com have really been enjoying your music, and I'm delighted to feature your album on my show today. Before we get to that, I thought I'd ask you about your career. I believe you played with some other bands in the past or currently. What can you tell us about your career in music?
Okay, I'll try to kind of make it relatively short. So maybe the first thing I should say is that when we're using the word career in this context, I guess it's a bit of a loose usage because it's not really a career in the sense that this is not my way of making revenue or anything like that. It's really just a passion of mine. You know, I have a day job and I've never really been a professional musician in that sense. Having said that, I have been involved in making music for more than 2 decades now. I'm 41 now. I'm not a young guy exactly anymore. But yeah, I mean, the first sort of serious band that I was in, really the first band that I was in was called Lavender. And that was I kind of very naively built it with some friends and without any real sense of direction at the beginning. But I guess it very quickly dawned on me that I was more into creating songs than actually performing, and that kind of became my main thing in a way. And that band was a bit of a vehicle to realize some ideas, and we had some success. We actually, believe it or not, back in 2004. We did a couple of shows with a newcomer then called Riverside. We literally opened for them at their first ever gig in my hometown of Wrocław. So that's a bit of a connection here with a band obviously that went on to great heights of success. But that band, Lavender was, we recorded a couple of demos. We actually wrote a lot of material. We played some gigs. We had some airplay even, here and there, but that never really amounted to anything. And I think in the end, we were a bit too amateurish and probably there was nobody to really guide us. And when I listen back to some of the old demos now, I kind of cringe at some of the performances. But anyway, that kind of dissolved more or less around 2007-ish. But I kind of kept writing songs because that's just what I do. You got to do something in life. And for a couple of years, really nothing was happening nothing concrete, I guess. But sort of in the mid-2000 teens, whatever you call them, teens, I guess, yeah. I sort of started the project with a female singer called Joanna Łukaszuk, a band called Strange Moments. And that wasn't anything super serious, but we made some demos. We played some acoustic gigs, and that was a little bit of for me, a way to return maybe to doing something a bit more actively musically. But that kind of also at some point started fizzing out, as things do. And then the Glass Island thing actually started at I think, tail end of 2019, almost by coincidence, because I kept making demos, and at some point my old friend Krzysztof Tułecki, who was the bass player in Lavender, visited me, and I played him some of those demos, and he just said to me, like, "Oh, these are good songs. Would you be interested in recording them, more properly?" And he basically introduced me to Krzysztof Witos, who's my main collaborator now, who's a producer and mixer and a sound engineer. Both Krzysztofs were in one. There still are in one band at the moment. So I kind of met him that way, and that just led to the Glass Island thing, and which wasn't really necessarily designed as a project. It was just, I've amassed a lot of material. How about we record it, And eventually the first album, I kind of shaped it into something that to me works as an album. Krzysztof Tułecki actually played bass on that album as well, but then he was just kind of, I guess, too busy to really contribute to that follow. But that's kind of how that project got going. There was no big idea behind it. In the meantime, luckily, I kind of managed to get Strange Moments back together as well, and we finally recorded our first album that came out in 2022 as well.
Right. Yes, I know about that one actually.
And And I can let you in, I guess, on the fact that, because that's not really a big secret, but we are recording another one, and we'll literally have another recording session this Sunday. So there's a lot of stuff happening. So yeah, I like having a couple of balls in the air. Oh, and I forgot to mention, I guess, Moon Station, which is another project I have as well. We put out an EP last year, and we're working on an album, but there are some delays, like, life, I guess, gets in the way. Moving houses and illnesses, little babies, all that sort of stuff. Right. You know the drill. But there's a lot of stuff happening, basically. And if I were to go into details, we could be talking for hours and hours.
Well, that was great. So Lost Media is actually your third album. You released under the band name Glass Island. You have the Glass Island album in 21, Damage Report in 22. I think you did an EP as well, and now there was an EP like preceding the first album, but that all those tracks ended up on the first album as well, although in different mixes. Mm-hmm. There were a couple of, I think, 2 standalone singles released in the meantime as well. So there is is some material out there already. Yeah, a nice catalog. So how is the new album Lost Media different than your other 2 previous albums, or is it not different?
Oh, okay. So this is an interesting one. So again, I'm going to caveat a little bit before I answer this, because the album was sort of ready to go back in, I guess, around November last year. But there were some delays with the artwork because we had quite an ambitious idea. I was working with this friend of mine who's a designer, and there were delays. I don't want to go into details, but because I knew that I wouldn't be able to release it back then, last year, basically, I decided to reshape the album a little bit, and I got rid of one song and recorded a new one. But anyway, my point is that this material feels a little bit old to me because I've actually almost finished. Yeah, I've almost finished the next one already.
Wow.
But that I'm planning to release it very early next year. I don't want to oversaturate the market, so to speak. But that album, it was a bit weird the way I started working on it, because we were just kind of finishing off the Damage Report about 2 years ago in the summer of 22. And originally the plan was to start making the next Strange Moments album, which we are working on now. And I had already done some work on it, and then it kind of got put on hold. And that left me in a bit of a limbo. I was a bit directionless in a way. I kept writing songs. I kind of always write stuff, but I'm trying to, when I work on an album, I'm trying to approach it with some sort of, I don't want to say concept in the sense that we think of concept albums, but a general idea of what the album is going to be. And for Lost Media, for a long time, I didn't really know what I was doing. I was writing a little bit on autopilot, you may say, which... on the one hand, the songs came very naturally because of that. But on the other hand, I felt maybe I wasn't challenging myself enough. I wasn't really expressing the full spectrum of what I can express. But the idea for the title at some point came up, and that gave me a lens through which to look at this material. And from that moment on, I was able to write more stuff and kind of give it a shape. And I think the album is different in the sense that it's maybe the most traditional sounding out of the 3. Like the most, I don't want to say old-fashioned exactly. I don't think it's old-fashioned, but I was sort of modeling it a little bit after some early 70s prog albums that had side-long epics on them. It's structured a little bit like that. And it's... I think it's a little bit more maybe coherent even than the previous one, the Damage Report, which I'm also, I have to say I'm immensely proud of, but it was a very eclectic album and full of contrasts. And this one, not that everything is maybe samey, but I think it flows more naturally. It's a little bit more reflective maybe because of that. A little bit lighter in tone, I guess, a bit less extreme. Honestly, my answer is, well, it is what it is. It feels different to me because of the structure and because of how I feel about it. But in the end, I'm not a critic, so it's not really up to me maybe to make clear statements about it. But it does feel to me different. And that is important for me. With every album that I make, I try to have some sort of approach to it that is unique to it. Even if the album doesn't end up being something totally different, then at least there is I'll use this expression again, there's a lens through which I can look at it that is specific to this album. Right. And having said that, the next one will be extremely different. I can promise you that. Because as I said, it's already almost done, so I kind of know what it sounds like.
Great. So Lost Media, you said it provided you, that title provided you a lens. So is there a theme or an idea behind the albums?
I mean, the album, the idea, if anything, is like something that I touched upon already, maybe. It's a little bit, as I said, I was kind of modeling it after some really old stuff. And the idea is that maybe it's supposed to be a little bit like a piece of lost media, like a sort of uncovered, gem, if I may say, from the past. And again, it doesn't necessarily mean that it really sounds like that, but that's how I felt about it, making it. And especially I think the last song, Stay Undercover, which is sonically, I mean, it's recorded in a modern way and mixed in a modern way, but the arrangement and the structure of the song, I really wanted it to feel like it's like it could be a song from 1972, but sort of just recorded with modern technology. But that's as far as the concept, really, if we may use this word, goes.
Okay.
Other than that, the title, I kind of played around with it. It appears in 2 different songs, and in both contexts I apply different meanings to it, right? Different than what normally is understood under this term, I guess. So I just found it quite inspiring.
Okay, let me ask you about the songs that we're going to listen to. The first track we're going to play is Almost Human. What can you tell us about that track and what it's about?
I mean, lyrically, I think it's pretty clear, and I'm touching upon a subject that is impossible to escape currently, which is AI, and and I just explore the idea of. I mean, I don't get into huge details, but into how it sort of taking over maybe creativity and even personality, and in terms of people's online presence, especially the idea that you can die, but you can still have a Facebook or Instagram account, and it can still be updated, not by someone else, but just by an AI model, right? That kind of thing. So that's really what the song is about. And musically, that was one of the last ones to be actually written. And that was when I decided on the shape of the album. And the idea was to have, as I said, a side-long epic. Originally, Almost Human was going to be like 20 minutes long. And I think I got to about the 14th or 15th minute of it. There is some more music that I recorded for it. But I just realized that it's kind of started to maybe overstay its welcome. If you're familiar with Monty Python,
yes, I am.
It was but so what I mean by what I'm saying is like what they did with sketches. Sometimes it would be like one of them would present a sketch and then would look at it. Okay, it's funny, but it's funny up to this moment, and then it kind of becomes a bit repetitive, boring. Let's just cut it and start something else here. And that's exactly what I did. I already had the song False Memories, which is the next track, and I realized that it's the same key, and I can kind of link them, and I can just create the side-long epic this way. So it's not maybe a formal suite. You can think of those songs separately, but they still connect. There seemed like there was enough of a connection lyrically anyway. So that's why Almost Human has I think quite an unusual structure where the first half is instrumental and the second one is basically like a song, right? Yep. And that's not what you usually see. And as I said, originally there was going to be another instrumental section and then another kind of song section, but they just, I don't feel they were as good as what I had up until that sort of 10th minute. So I just decided to finish it here and start something else. You know?
And then the first 3 tracks, like you said, are a suite. So we're going to listen to A Different Kind of Tomorrow. How does that fit in, and what's that about?
Okay, I mean, that was the penultimate track to be written for the album, actually. So that was, I felt like I needed a conclusion to the suite, so to speak. I can't remember exactly. I mean, it came very quickly. It felt like I just, having Almost Human and False Memories, it just felt like I knew what to do. It almost wrote itself. And lyrically, it's a little bit of it's maybe slightly naive. It's a kind of a song about overcoming some issues, overcoming your sort of bad memories and failures and stuff like that. And there's an element of hope, of kind of forgiving yourself and, letting go of stuff, because that's what it's explored in the previous song, but in a maybe slightly darker tone. And musically, I mean, for the musos out there, I mostly wanted to explore kind of a 5/4 signature there, and that's what I'm mostly doing in the song. Although there is a moment when there's one section that is kind of simultaneously in 6 and 7. So anyway, I don't want to go into too much detail.
But we love that.
But yeah, I mean, it was an easy song to write because I had the context of the two that came before it. And at the end, there is a little bit of a reprise of one of the riffs from Almost Human as well, although it's played in a different time signature and different key. So again, kind of making a bit of a nod towards the classics of prog, like, Yes would do that sort of stuff a lot. Right. And so it's a little bit of that. I mean, it's not super complex, but it's probably not the sort of thing that you would notice at first listen.
Then we're going to listen to the track called Past the Truth. That's a great track. Right. It's in the middle of the album.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. So, I mean, that was the last one to be written. That wasn't originally on the album. There was a different song there, which is going to be published at some point. I'm sure there will be a satellite album at some point, because I've already amassed a lot of stuff. And by the way, that song that ended up not being used wasn't like, I didn't feel it was bad or anything like that. I just felt like the second half of the album sounded a little bit too samey. It was another kind of lighter, gentler track. And As the Truth is also starts and ends kind of very kind of low key, very light, but the middle is quite heavy. Well, lyrically, again, there are two songs on this album, Credulous and Past the Truth, which I guess are a little bit political, or, I mean, as I don't want to cause too much controversy, and also being an outsider, I feel maybe slightly uncomfortable about it, but it was heavily inspired by the events, especially in the US in the recent years. So we don't have to get into a whole debate, but I think that the lyrics are sort of quite self-explanatory. One thing I will say is that I use the term lost media in this song, and in here I actually mean media as mass media, as the internet, television, and so on, and kind of how it is lost. And musically, I don't really know exactly. It's weird. The creative process is it's a very strange one. Because I kind of keep writing all the time, and very often if an idea isn't going anywhere, I just won't develop it. I will kind of forget it. And if it's going somewhere, then I usually don't manage to register the moment when I actually created it, if you know what I mean. So I don't really exactly remember how right. It came about. I think I started with the opening section, basically, with this kind of little guitar arpeggio that drives the first section. And I think I was probably just sort of strumming on the guitar. But how all of those other sections came about, I honestly can't really tell you.
There's some great piano in there as well, I have to say. But,
thank you. Thank you so much. That's an instrument I've been kind of exploring recently quite a lot. Actually, I've played keyboards for a long time, but it's a keyboard, like a electronic keyboard, and in a piano. There are two different things, Yeah. And I've actually in the last year, I think I've been playing the piano more than the guitar, even though the guitar is obviously my first instrument. But but yeah. So thanks so much. There'll be more of kind of piano stuff, I think, on the next album as well.
Okay, let's talk about the last track that I'm going to play, and it's also the last track on the album, Stay Undercover, another beautiful, epic song over 10 minutes. And I do love, I'll let you talk about that, then I'll tell you what it's something I like. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, so, okay, that one actually has a bit of a history. So I originally wrote an early version of this about 10 years ago. And it was an exercise in doing something that harkens back to the early 70s. And when I thought about the idea of those media, I thought, there was that track. I can maybe go back to it and refine it. So I kind of already told you a little bit about it musically. Mm-hmm. I think the idea was to make it very sparse at the beginning, especially because I have a tendency sometimes to overcomplicate things with arrangements and kind of oversaturate things. Maybe not so much in Glass Island, but especially the Strange Moments stuff is super, super busy, but that's kind of slightly different style of music. But with this one, I mean, I think like for the first 2.5 minutes, there's even no bass guitar in it. So I wanted the song to have a lot of space. That was definitely one of the things.
It breathes, yes.
Yeah. And even like the second section, which is instrumental, and again, there's a moment where there's just mellotron and some atmospheric effects, and that's kind of it for about a minute before the other instruments kick in. But lyrically, I can't really tell you exactly what it is about. It sounds like it could be about a relationship, but is it just about some romantic relationship? Is there something bigger going on? The subject of looking back, I guess, comes back a couple of times on the album. So it's, I guess, a little bit about regrets, but I can't explain to you what the title means. I really don't know. It was just something I kind of sang along, and it just sounded well. It felt like I was expressing myself. I'm not sure exactly what I mean exactly by those words, but I think that's all right. It's a bit abstract in that sense.
Right. So I'm going to tell you something about the album that I love. The first track and the last track, they bookend each other. And the first track started with that long instrumental piece before you got into the vocals. And then the last track started with the singing and ended with the long instrumental. I'm just curious, did you plan that, or is this just how the songs wrote themselves?
No, it's... Oh God, that's not necessarily mutually exclusive, even though it sounds weird. But I can't really tell you whether, because as I said, like Say Undercover was there was a draft of that song. I had the draft of the song for years, and I knew I wanted to start with a long piece, so that would be there would be a long instrumental intro and so on. But whether I really can't remember whether I made the decision to open Almost Human with a long instrumental because I knew I was going to finish with Say Undercover, or whether that was just a coincidence. But that was something that I became very aware of very, very, very quickly. And then there's this more happening. There's another kind of bookend thing happening. Actually, the opening theme of Almost Human is the same music as the closing section of Stay Undercover. So that was definitely deliberate. There's a different key, different arrangement, but definitely when I was putting together Almost Human, I had that in my head. I decided to use that.
Very clever.
So in terms of structure, and as I said, I like having a good idea for a structure. There are a couple, it works on a couple of levels. As I said, there is the repeating riff among the first sort of suite. There is that bookends for the whole album. There is also the thing like you have a long track, short track, long track, short track, that kind of structure as well. So I'd like to think that the structure of the album works quite well on several levels. Again, I can't really tell you whether I planned it all along or whether it was just something like, oh, I noticed that, so let's make sure it works. But I think it gives the album an interesting kind of structure. Yeah.
So let me close with just a couple of questions. Where's the best place for people to purchase your music? The place that you make the most money?
Most people, probably most of the listeners will know that the best place is Bandcamp, pretty much for everybody. Glass Island, Poland, that's one word, .bandcamp.com. So you can get the downloads, you can get the CDs. There aren't that many left for each of those albums because I only have always a limited run produced because again I'm not a mainstream artist. But they are very nicely made. If you like physical products, then go ahead. You can get them. They're not that expensive and they're really nice. And especially Lost Media has a really nice booklet as well. The designer I work with, Aleksandra Mroczyńska, did a great job. She kind of combined very modern techniques with a kind of an old-fashioned style as well, especially in the inner booklet. So that's the best place. Yeah.
Okay. Closing question: is there anything else that you'd like us to know?
Yeah, I've already mentioned that, but I'd love everybody to check out my other projects, Strange Moments, which is with female vocals. It's more song-oriented, but it's very intense, very busy. Part of it comes from my love of the band Garbage. But I kind of combined that sort of approach with some prog ideas. And there's the other project called Moon Station, which is also more song-oriented, a little bit less rock. The singer has a kind of a more soulful style of singing. It's a bit lighter. It's quite different, actually. And I write the songs together with the singer, so he has a huge impact on this. I think it's all kind of interesting stuff. If you can check out all of the stuff, is I think all worth listening. That's really it, I guess. And do follow me on you can follow me on Bandcamp or on Facebook. I'm sure you'll find the links, and so you'll get all the information about new stuff. And there's a lot of new music coming next year.
Okay,
you know,
great.
as I've already mentioned, there are a couple of albums that I'm working on at the moment, and with any luck, each of the projects, of the 3 active projects, will release an album next year. So.
Well, thank you.
Keep an eye out for that. Yeah, sure.
Thank you so much for your time. We do wish you the best and look forward to all your future music. And we will be checking out your other 2 bands as well. So please keep in touch. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I'm sure I will. And thanks to everybody for listening.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Take care.